All right. So, thank you everybody for being here. We know that it's in the middle of the day for some, it's the end of the day for others. So we just want to take just a teeny little moment just to share some gratitude and appreciation for everybody who's joining us. So today we are really honored to be joined by Liz Atkin, an artist, educator, internationally recognized mental health advocate. Liz has lived experience of compulsive skin picking and anxiety, and she has transformed that experience into powerful drawings, performances, and public acts of connection. Through her work, she has helped make a deeply misunderstood condition visible, not as something to hide, but as something that deserves compassion and understanding and care. Her work has been exhibited and held in collections such as the Wellcome Collection and the South London and the Maudsley NHS Trust. And she has spoken about skin picking and recovery on platforms including BBC and TEDx and other international media. But at the heart of Liz's work is something very simple and very human. It's helping people feel less alone. So Liz, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing, uh, this platform with our communities.
Oh,
So
thank you for
thank
having me.
you.
I'm really delighted to be here. It's great. Thank you.
And just for those who are joining us, who may be a little bit confused, we're talking about skin picking, and you are experiencing hair pulling. I just want to share this. Skin picking and hair pulling are both categorized as body focused repetitive behaviors. So those are BFRBs. So although that we are going to be talking about skin picking, some of the triggers, the thoughts, the behaviors, the intentions are very similar. And the emotions and the feelings, you can definitely relate to a lot of them. So even though we are talking about picking, this certainly can apply for anyone who experiences any other body focused repetitive behavior like hair pulling. So yeah, this is a conversation really for everybody. So I just wanted to start, Liz, for those who don't know you. I'd love for you just to share a little bit about your experience with skin picking, and what it was like for you before, you even had language for it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I thinking back, I've sort of had this feeling about skin picking for such a long time. It's been there since early childhood, and I come from a family where I had a mum who picked her skin. Her
Mm.
nickname, she told me, and once I'd started speaking out about it, was pick and poke in her childhood. So I have a kind of hereditary understanding there, I think. But I grew up with no knowledge this was a disorder or had a name or a diagnosis or,
Mm.
that there was a community of people that experienced this. So the earliest kind of memories I have of it are starting to lie very, very early in my life when people pointed
Mm.
out marks on my body or pointed at blemishes that I knew I'd picked and I'd created. And the very first one I kind of think of is I'd picked all these little bumps on my kind
Mm.
of the tops of my arms when I was a kid. And a
Yeah.
parent at like a school sports day said, "Have you got chicken
Oh.
pox?" And I remember saying, "Yeah, I've got chicken. Yeah,
Mm.
yes."
Mm.
And inside this absolute like well of shame
Mm.
began that, I would have to
Mm.
lie about this thing I was doing that I didn't understand. I didn't know what it was. And
Mm.
my skin picking, I think, as all kids do, I'd pick at blemishes on my body, I'd pick at scabs if I'd injured myself from falling over or something. But it became more and more obvious it was intentional, and I was picking at, things around my fingers or blemishes that started to appear on my body. And then when puberty hit, it just escalated
Mm. Mm.
massively.
Mm.
Um, and I think as a young child, I I learned to kind of hide the behavior very quickly and have excuses for it. And as my teens and 20s kind of progressed, I was lying more and more. And that is absolutely exhausting, isn't it? That you've got
Yeah.
this internal kind of trying to
Mm.
remember what you've said to people to cover up what this is and
Yeah.
pulling a t-shirt in to
Yeah.
cover up something that's on my arm or my back, or
Yeah.
and my picking was in lots of places across my body. So I'd pick my face as my kind of teenage years hit, but I'd be picking my fingers till they were bleeding, and I'd pick all down my thumb. I remember picking really badly at my hands all through school. And then that would progress to other places on my body. So my feet, I'd pick my heels until they were bleeding, and my back, my shoulders, my chest. So it kind of progressed and got more and more severe, I think,
Mm.
behind closed doors. Um, and I grew up in a very sort of tricky, turbulent home, so I know that stress and anxiety was kind of building in my life. My parents separated when I was quite young, and there was a lot of kind of difficulty there. So I know that lots of factors were kind of at play, but I didn't recognize that the picking was happening in all kinds of emotional states until much later. So I
Mm-hmm.
always used to associate it with anxiety and think, when I'm stressed and I'm anxious and when I'm
Yeah.
angry, I pick.
Yeah.
But I think in more recent years, like in the last couple of decades, I recognize it
Mm.
happens when I'm excited. It happens when I'm
Mm.
too hyper and too
Mm.
overstimulated. So, there's now a lot more understanding for the sort of rhythms of it and the patterning of it that, as you say, as a young child, I didn't have. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a complicated and I think very exhausting way of living. In my teens and 20s, I
Mm.
stopped buying clothing that would reveal parts of my body that had wounds on. So, my back and my arms were very had a lot of wounds and lots of scars. So, for a long time, I didn't own a t-shirt. I didn't go swimming. I'd lie about things so I could get out of activity so people wouldn't have to see. And I'd sit in particular lighting in restaurants. If I knew there were scabs on my face, I'd kind of check the lights and think, well, if I sit under that one, it's going to reveal, I'll sit on this shadier side of the table. I mean, my God, the nuances of how I would adapt my life to
It
kind of
sounds exhausting.
conceal this. Yeah,
Yeah.
exhausting. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
and all of that time, not knowing other people did this or thought like this or
Mm. Mm.
functioned with these challenges, that actually
Mm-hmm.
this was a huge part of every day. So um, it was a revelation to realize this had a name and this was a thing and that other people did it. So yeah,
Wow.
that
Yeah.
early stuff
Yeah.
was really painful actually and full of
Mm.
shame, and I think looking back, if I could give that a small version of me some of this information I now have, it would have been astonishing, that now we live in an age where this information can be in your pocket on your phone. And
Yeah.
now,
Yeah. Very
it's
different.
quite extraordinary. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, what was the age that you started picking?
So I have memories from 5 or 6 years old.
5 or 6.
And in fact, I have some images. I was going to ask if I could share. I've got an image
Yes.
that would you be able to let me share? I don't know if I can
Yes.
share
Yeah.
my screen. Um,
Just say share. There we go. Send you the
okay.
permission.
Okay. So I'll just quickly open this because it's got an image
Hmm.
here that will make a bit of sense to people. Just going to play it from the start. So the first image on this slideshow is
Hmm.
in my family photos. Now, I didn't think there was any evidence of me picking anywhere. I thought I'd done great work
Mm,
hiding
mm,
it.
mm,
And
mm.
this is me probably aged about 7 or 8, I think. And that
Okay.
kind of vacant expression where I'm zoning out is
Yeah.
there, right? I feel like
Yeah.
that's very present. And picking at
Yeah.
something on the back of my hand, those
Yeah.
movements of my hands feel so familiar.
Mm-hmm.
So I have those memories from early on, but I think it was there before that. I just remember adults pointing the behavior out. And also
Mm,
I was in a home where, my mum was picking and if she saw me picking, she'd panic and kind of say, "Stop picking," because she
mm,
picked
mm,
and she was
mm,
uncomfortable
mm,
and ashamed about her own
mm,
experience of it and
mm,
didn't have a name or understanding for it. So
mm.
this little version of me is often present in my whenever I share my story publicly because I think it breaks down that thing of it being this closed secret information. It becomes something that is a whole life of experience. This may have started young, but it's with me now. So, I feel I need
Yeah,
to honor the little version of me that didn't have this knowledge. So yeah.
absolutely. And I think one of the reasons why I'm asking, like, how old were you when you started? Because you mentioned that you learned really young, you learned how to lie, and that was to protect yourself. And I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for such a small little body
Yeah.
to have so much going on in their little head, that I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I can't wear
Yeah.
these clothes, I've got to say this. Like I mentioned, it's exhausting, but I mean, that just that in itself must have caused so much distress and stress,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
um, as you mentioned, the shame, and that then just repeats the cycle.
Yeah.
Um, what Now looking back, and we're looking at this little girl in that state and picking at her hand. What would you wish that someone had told you about skin picking and this condition at that time,
I
maybe?
I think if someone had asked me how I was feeling would have helped
Hmm.
because I think I never really thought of it as being something that was about a state of being, that actually something's out of kilter, something's dysregulated, whether it's, like I said, that kind of heightened feeling of anxiety or stress or even excitement or anger, these kind of feelings that I think fuel the behavior, but also in boredom, in things which are sort
Mm.
of too low stimulus. I know now that's where I pick as well. We just were talking at the beginning about if I'm at the cinema or if I'm watching TV, my hands will, start to do the behavior without me really thinking about it. So those two extremes of like big feelings or sensations being out of kilter. And I think as a young child, I didn't understand that's what it was, and I didn't understand
Mm.
that it was a way I was soothing myself. That was the other thing
Yeah.
that I think has given me so much more compassion for this experience in my life, that this isn't
Mm.
something I was doing to hurt myself. This wasn't something I was doing to cause that damage. It was a way of my body soothing itself. And and to outside eyes, it looks like you're damaging yourself deliberately. And that
Yeah.
thing is very difficult, I think, when you
Mm.
say, but I do it when I don't really think about it. I do it when I'm
Mm.
when I'm on the
Mm.
bus, or I'm not actively
Mm.
wanting to pick at a blemish, but my hands will go there. My
Mm.
hands will
Mm.
automatically do this thing. So I think as an adult now, I would give this small version of me a big hug and say, what is it that you need at this moment? Because
Yeah.
that's the thing that as an adult I now know. When I pick,
Mm.
what do I need? Am I hungry? Am I tired? Am I stressed? Am I understimulated? Am I overstimulated? So those are the I think that's the knowledge that has come through all
Mm.
the
Mm.
connections in this community, and much more understanding of the behavior. So a lot of compassion for this small version of me for sure. Yeah.
100%. When did you start realizing that this was a way that you were trying to cope, that this was self-soothing?
My life, I think my relation to it completely changed when I had this big pull for studying theatre and performance and creativity. And of course, there's a huge dichotomy there, that I wanted to study something really visual and really physical, but you're showing your body in a leotard
Mm.
or you're on
Hmm.
stage in a costume, and I
Mm.
had wounds and marks on my body. So there was this huge pull to do something creative in my education. I was really wanting to study, and that's where the information about skin picking absolutely shifted. So I did my first degree in drama, and then sort of 10 years later, I did an MA in dance, and my skin picking was just waxing and waning in my life all the way through this. But it was the MA in dance where things radically transformed. So I tell this in lots of my presentations and talks and things, but for those that don't know, I we started this course. I signed up to do this MA, and they invited us to record our movement, take a video camera into a studio, and just see how your body moves. Look at, like I'm
Mm.
talking now,
Mm.
like how I gesture,
Yeah.
how you
Yeah.
might get bored, how you'd sit, how you'd stand. And
Yeah.
I recorded myself, and there was my skin picking. As I set the camera up, I started to pick at my face, and then
Mm.
I recorded myself for 3 hours. So I had 3 hours of footage of this boredom of me picking my feet in the studio and picking my face.
Mm.
And,
Mm.
and I played the footage back, and I was absolutely devastated because it was the first time I'd ever seen it. I'd never recorded myself.
Yeah.
And I watched it kind of through the, I sped the footage up and saw how it moved. Like my hands
Mm,
went
mm,
here and then they
mm,
went there
mm,
and then they went here, and it looked like choreography. And I was there to study
mm,
dance. So for the first time, I put into Google picking at skin, and all this information came up, and it was a revelation because I was suddenly confronted with, language and information about
mm,
what this
mm.
was, and that other people did this and it belongs
Yeah,
in this family of
yeah,
conditions. And oh my, I
yeah.
remember sitting crying at my computer going,
Mm,
oh my God, this is a thing. And it led me on to kind of forums and chat rooms where at that point I was kind of looking for information, and also starting to read strangers on the other side of the world describing things I knew so well, and thinking,
mm-hmm,
how on earth do they do that in the
mm-hmm,
same way I do, and I have the same
mm-hmm,
feelings about it and think the same
mm-hmm.
way? And
Yeah.
that blew my mind that this was actually something that were other people experienced. And I think that was my first real connection with community, of thinking this is not, I'm not isolated in this experience. For all those years beforehand, I was in my 30s by the time I did this dance course. So, I'd gone, 25 years or something of picking before I found the name dermatillomania or skin picking disorder,
Yeah.
excoriation. You suddenly
Yeah.
realize it's got all these
Yes.
names.
Yeah.
And I think it just shifted everything. So I started to study it. I'd made the decision that this was kind of fascinating, that I had this movement pattern in my
Mm,
body, and I've got an image to show you. So I started documenting my hands and where I was picking, and that became a sort of project. I had no
mm,
idea it was going to be a kind of therapy. I wasn't there for therapy, but I was kind of doing something very therapeutic. And I started making dances, which kind of explored the movement of my hands going to my body and trying to kind of turn this movement into something that had this feeling to it. It was
mm,
sometimes the
mm,
picking felt overwhelming. So how do you kind of work with
mm,
that creatively and choreograph
mm,
something that feels like that? So it started as movement, and then slowly it turned into photography. So over 2 years, this is during my MA in performance, I started to make self-portraits about what skin picking felt like. And
okay.
this image still feels like it does all these years later. So this is in 2005. I feel like there's a texture on my skin. And, if I'm scanning for something to pick over time, this is what it feels like. I don't, I
Mm,
felt this was a
mm,
way to kind of express it.
mm,
And
mm,
working with kind of tactile materials. So this is acrylic paint that kind of I can peel away or I can pick away. It's perfect, right, for skin picking, but it's obviously replicating that, but not doing the damage of skin picking, but also kind of trying to
mm,
rethink my skin and see my skin in a different way. So these
mm.
images to start with were all kind of about that, and the relationship with mirrors, picking in the mirror for hours on end and losing sense of time. I made a whole series about working with mirrors and how mirrors would be so problematic. Particular
Yeah.
lighting in a bathroom would just set me off for hours. So
Yeah.
I wanted to do something, and it's very cathartic, to suddenly be confronting this stuff. And, I feel it required a huge amount of bravery. I look back at these and I think I don't even know how I dug that deep to kind of face it, but it was
Mm-hmm.
a necessity. This thing had dominated my life for so long. So the images, those sort of images to start with were um, help healing and transformative. And over time, I've sort of made a lot of these digital photography sort of stuff was about kind of rethinking these places as places I'd picked for years and years and years. Scars and in these places will be on my body forever. So it's a way to kind of reclaim that surface and
Yeah.
feel a gentler kind of relationship to what I'd felt about my skin.
It's
Um,
incredibly symbolic.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all about sort of some of that stuff I didn't really have language for, and I think
Mm,
I think an image can carry something universal in a lot of ways, that a human body can experience something and we can maybe feel something from that image. But
mm,
in 2013, life kind of took another turn, and I had a full-time job at this point, so I wasn't making artwork and for a living. I was doing
mm,
this kind of
mm,
on the side. But I
mm,
had a nervous breakdown in 2013, and my skin picking had come back really badly, and I had a year
mm,
off work. So I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety for the first time and on medication, and starting to talk to a therapist about skin picking in this big mix of being really seriously unwell. I think if someone had said I was going to come through it, I honestly didn't think I was going to come through it. So it was a really,
Yeah.
really dark time.
Mm.
And a gallery that I'd made a connection with in a hospital. So there's a gallery here called the Bethlehem Gallery, which is in Bethlehem Royal Hospital, has an anxiety unit, and they put me in touch with the curator, and she offered me an exhibition, and I was off sick, and she said, well, it's for the anxiety festival, and I was like, I'm off sick with anxiety. And then I made the decision to do this commission. She asked me to create some images, and these were the images that I
Mm.
made. And they were a big moment of sort of really facing this darkest point in my life head on. And they were shown in a solo exhibition in Los Angeles a year later in another hospital.
Amazing.
So there was a kind of
Mm.
moment of
Mm.
health being completely threaded into what I was doing. And I started telling people it was about these experiences. But my friend bought me a box of charcoal as a present when I was unwell, and that is what initiated everything else that's followed. So drawing has become this kind of magical thing, and I started to draw. And you talked at the beginning about sort of connecting with people. I started to draw initially because I was picking so badly on the tube. I'd pick my hands and I'd pick my face, and my hands would be bleeding before I get to where I was going. And I'd also
Yeah.
started to have panic attacks, and I'd have to get off the train, and there was all this kind of complication about not feeling able to cope in overwhelming situations. And the therapist I saw said, you need to find something that you can do to occupy you on the journey. And I put a
Hmm.
sketchbook in my bag and this box of charcoal my friend had bought me. I remember
Hmm.
saying, I don't really draw, I don't know what I'm going to do with that. But I started doing these little sketches and drawings, and I filled a sketchbook. So on one of the journeys, my sketchbook had run out, and I felt, I started to pick, and I was like, I need to draw like now. And at that point in London, there were copies of this free newspaper all across the carriage. They were on the floor, they were on the seats next to me. So I drew over a newspaper, and I kind of liked it, like this kind of quick graffiti. And I started to do this
Mm.
every time I was on the train. And people were nosy, you sit in a carriage, people
Mm.
see you drawing and they wonder what's going on. And I realized I was kind of being witnessed by everyone around me. And
Mm.
I started to give them away to passengers. So people would say, what are you doing? And I'd say, I'm drawing because I pick my hands and I get anxious, and this is helping me. So I started passing them to passengers, and that started this whole bizarre and wonderful way of connecting with people and talking about skin picking on public transport. Who knew this
Yeah.
was going to be a thing? So
And
yeah.
what was their reaction when you told them that, this is a thing I do? And, were they surprised, shocked? Did they
Yeah,
resonate? Like, what were the common
some
reactions?
some of the most amazing reactions were people saying, is that a thing? I think I do that. Is that like the
Oh,
thing where
wow.
people pull hair from their head? And I was like, oh
Oh,
my goodness, I'm having
wow.
conversations about
Yeah.
body focused repetitive behaviors with
Yeah.
strangers on public
Yeah.
transport.
Yeah.
And then, I now know that the statistic, I think, is 1 in 20 live with a
Mm.
BFRB. So on a
Yeah.
daily commute, I'd be talking to people and saying, I do this because I pick my skin. And
Yeah.
I'd had people like, one, I really remember a guy rolled his trouser leg up and showed me wounds on his leg and said, oh, I pick too. Look, this is what I struggle with. And I was like, oh my God, I'm having these dialogues with
Mm.
people.
Mm.
And it was incredibly powerful to shift this kind of guilt and shame into something that was
Yeah.
public and start to talk about it. And yeah, that sort of led to doing a lot of advocacy. And some of the things you mentioned at the beginning came out of that. And it started because I ran out of a sketchbook on a train. So it was not an intended life choice. But these drawings kind of, yeah, grew and grew. So before COVID, I'd given away about 18,000 free drawings. And
18,000.
yeah,
Wow.
so the
That's a lot
kind
of
of
train trips.
a lot of train trips, but I did it over like 5 years, so it's a long time. But
Yeah.
there were the sort of compulsion, I think, in skin picking. I've recognized that that sort of compulsion is part of how I function, and actually that there's something kind of useful in channeling it into something else. And I I started to sort of really embrace that helped me calm some of that feeling. that sort of jittery feeling. I don't know how to describe it. Like there's a lot internal kind of stuff that finds a sort of different route and can
mm,
relax if there's
mm, mm.
a rhythm or a patterning to it that supports it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Gosh, so much. I'm just thinking back to when you're handing these beautiful pictures to strangers and you're having this conversation with them about your personal experience with a very serious and complex disorder, excoriation disorder. And then they are coming to terms with, oh my gosh, is this something that is real? Because this is what I'm experiencing, or
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
what my loved one is experiencing. What do you think is the impact of that?
I know that people I encountered on those train journeys would sometimes message me days, weeks, months later and
Okay.
say, I saw you on the train, you were giving out drawings, you said something about skin picking and and then you were gone and our journeys kind of but it stayed with me and I
Mm.
looked up what it was and I've gone to my doctor and I'm
Mhm.
looking for treatment, and those I would get messages from, and I still get messages from people
That's
now that have
amazing.
watched the TED talk that I did, a TEDx talk,
Yeah.
who, have Googled something in the middle of the night and sat like I did at the computer looking for
Yeah.
information. What is this thing I do in private that no one knows about? What is it?
Mm.
I want to know what I can do about it. And I think
Mm.
to have that chance encounter, I recognized that it was doing something powerful for someone else. But
Mm.
it starts with my kind of recovery tool.
Mhm.
It was always about doing something good for me. But an act of kindness also is memorable, right? I was giving the
Yeah.
drawings away, so
Yeah.
people would remember that they'd seen me, and then they'd,
Yeah.
sometimes that resonated, or they'd gone home and mentioned it to their best friend, or their
Mm.
sister,
Mm.
or their brother, or their,
Mm.
a friend who might experience something similar. So the ripple effect of community is
Mm.
absolutely incredible, and I think now with social media and everything we now have through our phones, that can happen so
Mm.
much more quickly. Those connections can happen much more quickly, but if you've lived in secrecy and silence with this disorder for so long and then you hear someone talking about it, it would have changed my life to hear that
Yeah.
myself, a decade
Yeah.
earlier or 15
Yeah.
years earlier. So I realized the power of it, that actually, if there's momentum to this, I have a responsibility to do something with it, I think. And it
Mm.
felt, it didn't feel like a great big weight. It felt like a release, like actually,
Mm.
let's
Mm.
obliterate this shame and
Mm.
stigma about this
Mhm.
thing because
Mhm.
it's common. So many people
Mhm.
do it. This is not something I should feel shame and guilt for. That, for so long I felt it was something I should stop, that I should just be able to give up. And it's a
Yeah.
bad habit. I should just be able to stop. Like people choose to, stop eating meat or doing or
Mm.
whatever.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
it. And every year I'd have this New Year's resolution, and 5 seconds past midnight, I'm, picking and biting at my
Yeah.
fingers, or I'm
Yeah.
picking at my face. And every year feeling that, pit
Mm.
of shame, like, oh, I've failed again. And I think
Mm.
what has changed is recognizing this is not a weakness and it's not something that I can switch off and just like, oh, it's gone now, I'm fine. I think
Yeah.
I've recognized that it's something that needs support and needs care. And I have a lot more compassion for that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wondering during these conversations on the tube, or the train, or even just in the last couple of years of your experience, what do you think is still, and you kind of alluded to a couple of them, but what do you think is still misunderstood about, whether it's skin picking or hair pulling or any BFRB? What do you think
I
is
think
still
I
misunderstood
think
from the
I think
community?
it still has this reputation of being a habit, and I think that's
Mm.
really really challenging for people that live with it, because with the habit you feel like it's something that um you should be able to get a grip on and kind of sort out,
Yeah,
and
it's
actually
movable. Yeah.
it's movable. And I think
Yeah. Yeah.
then the kind of failures that keep happening,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
failures in inverted commas, I'm not going to think of it as that anymore, but
Yeah.
where you have a moment where the picking comes back, or something
Mm.
seismic happens in your life and the picking is suddenly really bad again. That, I have those experiences where, my mum died a couple of years ago, and of course the first thing my body's doing in grief is picking. And I'm not going to
Mm.
say
Mm.
to myself at this point, you're going through one of the
Mm.
most difficult things you're ever going to go through. Of course, it's one
Absolutely.
of the first things my body wants needs to do because I'm
Yeah.
regulating these waves of emotion that I'm,
Mm,
this is what my body's coping strategy is. So I think understanding it as a condition was really helpful for me. I felt such relief to know it was a disorder that I know a lot of that kind of claiming the name of it even and thinking
mm,
compulsive skin picking helps me understand it.
yeah.
It gives
Yeah.
me ownership of this experience rather than it being
Yeah.
this thing that just feels other and
Very
that
isolating. It kind of makes
yeah,
it possibly makes you feel like you're part of a community now, because if it's a
yeah,
disorder, then obviously other people are experiencing this. So I'm
yeah,
no longer by myself experiencing this unique habit that
yes,
only I'm doing, and only obviously
exactly.
I'm unable to control.
Absolutely. And I think
Uh,
when you hear from people in the community and you hear your own story coming out of the
mm,
mouths of other people,
mhm.
it's so healing because you think
Yeah.
this is a common thing. This is the commonalities of the disorder are powerful in
Yeah.
our community because it resonates that you're experiencing something that's human. It's not just this singular kind of thing, it's a shared thing. And I certainly feel a lot of compassion has come from making those connections and making friends in the community who know what that
Mhm.
feels like.
Yeah.
That's really, really healing.
Um, a lot of people might be on the webinar right now, watching the recording later, and they do not have creative bone in their body. And they're probably thinking, oh, like, if obviously I can't draw, so there's no hope for me, or I'm not going to be able to experience, you know, what Liz has shared. What would you want them to know about? And you spoke about expression, and even in our conversations before this particular one, we were
Yeah, yeah,
speaking about that energy in our fingertips that you just want to
yeah,
release, whether it's picking up stones or
yeah,
shells, or mosaicing or playing with sand. It's just
yeah,
having the opportunity to have the energy being released from the fingertips,
yeah,
and that's for both skin picking and hair pulling. So what
yeah.
would you want them to know about, expression versus talent?
I think everybody's got the capacity to be creative. I think we forget that as children we are enormously creative and playful, and as adults we grow out of it. And I think there are big issues in how our societies are set up to stop creativity because
Mm, mm,
there has been a lot of research around creativity and um sort of I think I can't remember the name of the guy. There's a NASA creativity specialist who worked with NASA to look for like innovative people to design things. And he looked at children's creativity using this test that he'd done on like NASA
yeah,
scientists.
yeah.
And there was this crazy thing of like 98% of 5-year-olds had this innate creativity. And by the time you're 15, the creativity is at 12% because
Yeah.
you're starting to, and the thing I think that is potent and amazing and magical is
Mm,
curiosity. One of the things that shifted
mm,
for me, I didn't draw. I'm self-taught. I didn't like.
mm,
I don't feel that it's this talent in inverted commas. It's about really
mm,
committing to something you love and just doing it as much as possible. We are
mm,
specialists in BFRBs. If you
mhm.
think of it that way around, I am a
Absolutely.
specialist in my
Of
skin
course.
picking, and I
Of
think
course.
the scrutiny and all the stuff that goes with this disorder can be
Yeah.
pushed into so many different creative outlets. It doesn't have to be
Mm,
drawing. It might be
mm,
baking. But it might be
mm,
something that's about that energy. And I think when you talk about using your
mm,
hands, that is such a significant thing, I think, in these conditions that um, if I am animating my fingertips and keeping my tactile kind of connection going, um, I think it soothes something in my brain and it soothes something physically for me. So even if I'm not drawing, we've talked about this already. I've got something near me. I've got pebbles when I'm watching TV, or I've got a shell while I'm talking to you now.
mm,
But I think creativity isn't fixed either, and creativity can be many things. You can be
mm,
taught. Creativity is about a curiosity and a fascination for the world around us. And I think all humans have that. And I think children have it
mm,
very strongly because they're inquiring about the world. And I think it's about reframing skin picking and hair pulling as something to be. I mean, I what happened for me was I found it fascinating. I wanted to know and I wanted to find some answers, and becoming this kind of particular fascination led me in this journey. I didn't know I was going to be doing this as a career. I certainly never thought I'd be speaking to anybody outside my family about this. And here we
Yeah.
are. So
Yeah.
actually it's the curiosity that I think is human. Naturally, to ask questions
Mhm.
is about starting a creative dialogue in many ways.
I love that you bring up the word curiosity to help those who may feel like they're not creative or have talent. Just be curious with uh, this pen and this piece of paper, and just be curious with how my
Yeah,
fingertips take this journey.
yeah,
But it also applies to our internal dialogue.
yeah,
Maybe we can say, um, I'm just such an idiot. I just can't stop. I just can't stop doing this. We can switch it maybe and be
yeah,
more curious. And you
yeah,
could say, perhaps like you were saying to yourself, I wonder what I need right now.
yeah,
That's being curious instead of being self-judgmental and self-critical
yeah.
and having that negative self-talk. So
I
I
think
think the
that,
word curious is really powerful.
yeah. And that question is the one that I think I've got better at asking myself so much more
Hmm.
regularly. And
Hmm.
often, switching the energy is such a big thing. So my picking would often be at night. I would pick in the evening or first thing in the morning. They're kind of getting ready for work or getting ready for bed. They were like major trigger points because I'd be in the bathroom and then, there we are, and suddenly it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And I think all this time later, recognizing that at some point there's a moment of um, like asking yourself what's going on, like what am I thinking about that's making me feel I need to be doing this right now? And what could I do instead? Can I walk out of
Hmm.
this room and go and make myself a herbal tea? Can I walk out of this room and go and put some music on? Or, what is the thing that just is just a sort of, what do I think of it? Like a shift of direction. Instead of thinking,
Mm,
I
mm,
mustn't do this, I mustn't
mhm,
do this, because
mhm,
that is the
mhm.
energy that then will make me do it more because I'm
Yeah,
squishing it. But
yeah,
actually it's a more gentle kind of way of being
yeah,
with yourself and thinking,
yeah.
my body's doing this because it's requiring me to slow down, it's requiring
Yeah.
me to regulate, it's trying to
And
make me
listen.
regulate. This
Yeah,
is the
yeah,
thing. And what
yeah.
what can that be? But if it happens during the day, I think nature plays a big part in my life where I moved out of the city and I live by the sea now. So, if my energy is bad and I feel that kind of, I'm in my head or I'm on my fingers, it's like going and walking to the water and just being at the water
Mm,
for 10
mm,
minutes, 20 minutes, or being out in the park or
mm,
walking and
mm,
noticing things around me so my attention goes outside of my body. Just
mm.
hugely important and hugely beneficial because it's
Yeah.
the scrutiny I think that goes to my body, that goes to my skin, can go to something else. Even if it's the pebble I've got in my hand, what are the
Mm, mm.
details I notice about it? And just noticing one thing doesn't have to be like this massive healing
Yeah,
strategy.
yeah,
It just has to be
yeah.
one
Yes.
choice, and
Yeah,
that's enough for that
yeah.
moment. And to not beat myself up if like 10 minutes later it
Mm,
starts again,
mm,
because
mm,
then
mm.
it's like the body's, I need to do something to regulate and calm. What can it be?
Yeah,
What's a
yeah.
what's a good thing to do right now?
I've got a couple more questions for you just to end off the session. And for someone who's listening right now, whether they're picking or they're pulling or it's a loved one, and they're doing it in secret, and they are feeling stuck or ashamed, what would you want to say to them directly right now?
That you're not alone at all. There are
Mm,
so many humans around the world that have felt that exact feeling in that exact moment and probably uh, feel those intense feelings just as you might be feeling. But there is hope and there is so much love out here in this
mhm.
community that can start to change things and ease things. And I think the peace that starts to come when you recognize you're not alone, I feel, with with hope, there's love in hope, right? That you start to feel a lot calmer towards yourself and a lot more love towards yourself. For a long time, I think I beat myself up about it and felt it was this personal failure. And now I
Mm,
don't think that at all. I think it's quite a kind of amazing thing that this
mm,
disorder has been with me. It's kind of my companion. I sometimes think of it as like a companion that's quite irritating that will tell me
mm.
when I'm out of kilter. And actually,
Yeah.
instead of thinking, oh my God, here it is again, I think, oh,
Mm,
right, here we go.
mm.
Okay, so what is it today? That I'm tired, I'm irritable, I've had a bad
Yeah.
experience, I'm ruminating about this thing. Of
Mm,
course, I'm
mm,
picking. Okay, so
mm,
what can I do to break that cycle for a moment?
mm.
And
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
it's, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say for some, it might even be, thank you for showing up. What are
Yeah,
you? So again, it's
yeah,
for some people right now that might not be the best thing you want to hear, because this moment might be incredibly difficult. But I
yeah,
think you can get to a point where you're like, thank you for showing up. Thank you.
yeah,
Um, what can I do? What do you need?
yeah,
Thank you for alerting me. Thank you for telling me there's something going on here.
yeah.
Some
And
actually
I
see it
think,
as a superpower.
and that language of the soothing of it, instead of
Mm,
thinking this is here to cause me damage, I'm going to
mm,
end up
mhm.
in this situation that I always end up in. Instead, it's like a sort of gentle reflection on it and thinking, okay, my skin picking is alerting me that I need to
Yeah,
do something to
yeah,
shift this. It's
yeah.
trying to soothe me. So what can I do to soothe myself in a more healthy way, or
Hmm.
in a way that doesn't involve my BFRB? And that might
Yeah.
be, a small step out of it, and it just
Mm,
starts to break it. And then I think the other thing is, we can build these new patterns in our life. Skin picking is such a, I've come to know it in my own life as such a pattern that comes and goes, and you know, recognizing that the urge to pick, those urges that you have do fade, and if you sort of
mhm,
ride the
mhm,
urge, it
mhm,
takes so
mhm.
much courage and patience to do it because you want to engage in it so much, but actually
Yeah,
there is a moment where it tips off and it becomes something
yeah,
calmer, and
yeah.
also those sort of intense sensations can change. And it took me a long time to get to grips with that, because I think for so long I just wanted to get in there and like, okay, we'll lose
Mhm,
3 hours while I pick my back.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think actually the healthier thing is starting to ask yourself those questions, and the thing
Mm.
that helped me was that, I think.
You
Yeah.
mentioned helping people feel less alone. How can someone, what are some steps that they can do right now, maybe after this session, or at the next step? What can they do to feel less alone?
I think we've touched on it already, but I think communities
Mm,
such as
mm,
skinpick.com, in the
mm,
UK, we've got BFRB UK, there's Habit Aware, there's TLC Foundation,
mm,
there's Picking Me. There's lots and
mm,
lots of organizations that are doing incredible work, bringing communities together. And
yeah.
actually, with the social media and technology we now have, you can attend something online and not need to leave your home. You can go to a group, a support group in person. Those connections now exist, and the language and the kind of advocacy that so many people have done, I think, has started to really transform access to this information that for a long time didn't exist. So it might be that you can do something quite anonymously and don't need to be kind of
Mm,
present in groups, but start to get the
mm,
information that you need.
mm,
But I think slowly there is a point where
mm,
you want to connect with people and
mm,
start to have that support. So
yeah.
to gently start to reach out and to trust your own
Mm.
instincts with that, because people will do things in the time that feels right for them. Um,
100%, yeah. And I think this is why these sessions that we're having right now are so
yeah,
important, that this is a community. We are already connecting with individuals, although we can't see the participants and the participants can't see other participants, but they're present, they're here. That's a
yeah,
form of connecting, even though it's all anonymous.
yeah,
It's a, just a reminder that there are other people here with very similar circumstances and experiences.
yeah,
It's the first step.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, you're right. We want people to connect in other ways as well, by communicating and sharing. We've recently launched a community page on our website and app. So anyone, it's free. So anyone who wants to connect, it can be anonymous. You can create a nickname or even use your real name. You can connect with others and just or just simply just share a thought or a feeling or just your
Yeah.
experience, not wanting to having to engage with anybody, but just
Yeah.
having your share on the page um, can really help somebody else.
Yeah.
This has been a fantastic uh, conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope
Thank you,
others
Meryl.
have as well. We do have some questions. Firstly, I'd love for you to talk about your events and what you get up to and how others can participate and be creative. So maybe just share with everybody what
Absolutely.
that's all about.
So, as part of BFRB UK and Ireland, I've started to run some online drawing workshops. So, we started these in November, December, and they're going to be monthly sessions, just an hour of drawing once a month. They're from 7 till 8 p.m. UK time on. There's one coming up on Monday. So if you want to attend, I'll ask Meryl to share some information afterwards. But if you connect with me on Instagram, it's on my feed there. So there's a poster for the workshop. And as I sort of mentioned at the beginning, I've ended up kind of working in lots of creative health settings. So I teach drawing and art classes for well-being. So people that
Mm.
might not might not think drawing is for them, or be thinking, "Oh my God, I haven't drawn for years." This is absolutely for everybody, and also family members are very welcome to join too. So it's a way to just refocus. A lot of what we've been talking
Mm.
about with
Mm.
this, finding a bit of curiosity. We
Mhm.
take inspiration from lots of different artists, and I guide some drawing activities with BFRBs in mind. So kind of using both our hands to kind of rotate the paper and mark making
Mm.
that's
Mm.
repetitive. So we're looking at artists that have a kind of repetitive pattern to some of the
Mm.
mark making. So really playful, really relaxed, and hopefully within an hour you start to feel the benefits of that. There's lots of evidence that 45 minutes of drawing, no matter the ability,
Mhm.
absolutely transforms. Well, it really helps to lower cortisol, stress, and
Mm.
produce dopamine. And so
Mm.
there's a lot going on. So if you fancy joining me, I would be so happy to see you there. And it's just £10 on a once a month. So yeah, I'll share details at the end as well.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions about the event, they're welcome to email us at if you're coming from SkinPick, it's support@skinpick.com, or if you're coming from Trickstop hair pulling, it's support@trickstop.com. Um, if you are looking for answers on how to get treatment or help or how to access the community page, please email us there as well. And talking about the community page, if you are going to be attending the drawing event, I would love to hear about it. So please share with us. You can email me and share me your story and what you've created or share it with the community. We'd love to hear the experience and how it was. Um, so please, if you have questions, please send them through now. We have a couple minutes that we still have. There's another question here. Thanks so much for sharing. I too have been picking since childhood. Do you find simple things like getting facials or manicures help to stave off the picking? Like when I don't have a manicure, my skin grows around the nail picking, the nail making, picking more tempting. Does this make sense? And thank you again.
Yes, absolutely. So I don't do manicures as in go to have manicures, but I do paint my nails, and that actually really helps me. So I pick all round my fingers. So yeah, if my nails are painted, I'm less likely to do it. I don't know why. And they're
Mm,
not acrylic
mm,
nails, they're just my nails with
mm,
nail varnish. But yeah, that I mean, small, I feel like that's a small ritual as well that kind of helps me do something self-care wise, thinking about ways to start to intervene in how skin picking or hair pulling kind of presents. You know, if I've painted my nails, I know I've done a thing that is a nice thing for me, but has also maybe done something that means I'm going to be less likely to pick round the edges of my nails. So it's a tiny strategy, but actually finding those little things that help, I think, is really important. So yeah, I've never been brave enough to go and have a facial, so I think I'd freak out people touching my face. But anyway, so yeah, it some things yes, other things no.
Sure, there's more questions here. And I do apologize. My dog is having a very loud conversation with the neighbors. So sorry
It's
for the
okay.
barking. Another question here is, I can't see any marks on you. Do you still pick, and how do you heal your skin?
So I have scars all across my chest and all over my back, and they have faded dramatically. So when I was a teenager, I thought I would never wear any revealing clothing ever again. And
Mm,
I'm now in my late 40s, and the scars are there. They're raised marks, but I feel very much calmer about them being present. I think they're, when the sort of healing thing has slowly started to happen in my life, they are part of the kind of tapestry of what's happened. They're part of my lived experience, and I feel a lot calmer about their presence. So I swim. I mean, if someone had said to me 20 years ago, you're going to live by the water where you'll be swimming every week, you're going to be in a swimsuit every week, I would have been like, are
mhm,
you crazy? Like,
mm, mm,
I didn't
mm,
swim for a decade or something.
mm,
So they're there. And and the thing is, I think I used to be so aware of people's eyes kind of going across my shoulders or going across my
mm,
where they are. And,
mm,
that awful kind of moment of someone seeing it. And now I don't feel the same about that. And I think if people see them, they're part of me. That's part of what I've experienced.
yeah.
And there's a lot of compassion for how the body heals too, because I
Mm,
never thought they would fade enough for me to get to that point. So
mm,
over a long time, they have faded. But yeah, there's blemishes on my body all the time. There are blemishes that my hands go to all the time, and I don't think I've ever had a year or a month or a week where I haven't had something on my body that I'm picking at. So it's
mm,
never fully gone. And I think there are moments where it comes back very, very badly for me. And I recognize that those are moments where I'm in a lot of distress or I'm in a lot of, I talked just now about my mum. I picked my face very badly after she died, and that was the first time I'd picked my face in a really long time. And I was really devastated because,
mm,
it had felt like that had calmed quite a lot in my life. And I
mm,
as it started to happen, I realized like, this is the thing my body knows better than anything. And there's a lot of compassion that comes with recognizing my body trying to soothe it at that,
yeah,
that crisis point.
yeah.
So yeah, um, there are definitely marks that are there forever and
Mm, mm,
marks that are current. And I think
mm.
it's yeah, it's part of what my body does and what my body experiences. Yeah.
Thanks, Liz. There's another question here that we'll definitely squeeze in, and we will finish off with. If someone and if you aren't able to answer this, I'm happy to give it a try. If someone in your life is a trigger to pull hair or pick skin, how do I deal with this?
If someone is a trigger that makes you want to
Yeah,
pick or pull.
yeah, yeah.
So my mum, bless her, was my trigger for so much. And it would be incredibly difficult if we were together because she would pick and I would pick
Mm,
and we would
mm,
be like
mhm,
setting
mm,
each other off. I think as I've got older and our relationship sort of was quite turbulent, I got braver and stronger at saying what I needed and to tell her that it when those things weren't appropriate. And it's very
mm,
I think back and I think it required a lot of like putting my foot down and being like, this is my boundary and
yeah,
you're stepping over it. But
yeah,
it takes an enormous amount of practice and strength, and
yeah,
particularly when it's a
yeah,
family member who back in the
yeah.
day was saying things vocally that would, that
Mm,
it was there right from the beginning.
mm,
So it
mm,
took a long time for me to recognize actually that's not appropriate
mm,
and that's not helpful for where I am today.
yeah. I
But
think I echo
Meryl, I'd
that
love to
one.
hear. Yeah.
Oh, I think I echo that. Having boundaries and very clear communication. I think a lot of the time where individuals can be triggering is often they don't understand.
Yeah.
So trying to get them to be educated and read up on skin picking, hair pulling, and get as much information as they can.
Yeah.
Already just having that understanding can potentially shift their own mindset, therefore
Yeah.
potentially change their language and how they communicate with you. So
Yeah.
that can certainly help with that. But I do agree that you as the individual clearly communicating your boundaries and consistently is really key. Reinforcing that is really important.
Well,
It,
one of
it
the other things,
sounds,
sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, Liz, it's okay.
I was going to say one of the other things that I think changed for me is if someone notices me doing it and they mention it, that would sometimes come up, and I feel
Mm,
like, particularly in my relationship, so my wife,
mm,
if she sees me picking, she wants to help me stop picking,
mm-hmm,
and it would be massively triggering if she says, "You're
mm-hmm,
picking, stop picking." So
mm-hmm.
we have come to an agreement where she just touches me, but it's gentle and it's not, and that works for me because I'm like, if you
Yeah,
say it out loud, I just feel like, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
it makes it happen
yeah.
worse. So sometimes if someone is trying to be supportive and trying to be
Mm,
caring,
mm,
finding a way that works for you, if you want that to be
mm-hmm.
said, it might be something that actually you're like, don't even say it. It doesn't help me. Whatever it is
Yeah,
for you.
yeah.
But I think for me, if particularly if I'm picking watching TV, this is the perfect example. My wife can't bear the noise because she hears the kind of, so
Mm-hmm.
she will lean across and just be like, and it's just enough for me to go, oh yeah, I just need to pick up a
Yeah,
pebble. Thank you very
yeah,
much.
yeah.
Because often I don't notice that it's happening. And then, a
Mm,
person near me who is my loved
mm,
one who wants to say,
mm,
by the way, Liz, it's happening.
mm,
It can be a gentler way to do it. And
mm,
I didn't really find that with my mum because she was very critical when she saw me doing it. So
mm.
I think it depends who the person is and whether you need to put in a boundary of like, actually, that's not helpful for me, and I don't I don't want you to say those things. I don't know how
Yeah.
you, yeah,
And again, I think maybe be curious. Why is this person so triggering for me? What
yeah,
what are they saying that is triggering this thought or this urge? So I think being curious can really help. And we were talking about this with Lauren McKinney from the Picking Me Foundation last night
yeah,
about communicating with your loved one about when they're in a picking episode and what you can do. And
yeah,
she mentioned a couple of strategies, and we encourage people to go back to that episode as well. But yeah, mentioning it can be a gentle touch, a gesture, it can be
yeah,
a word that's not related to picking or pulling. So
yeah,
I think just as you say, that when someone says you're picking or stop picking, even if it's said in a very compassionate way,
yeah,
what you've done is that you've announced the shame and now
yes,
you've exposed
exactly.
it, and that can be
Yeah,
incredibly furthering being triggering for that individual.
yeah,
So maybe saying the word agreeing between the two of you. Okay, when I'm doing something, maybe just say the word cupcake.
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's it's got no reference to picking or pulling, so it's not going to make me feel shameful. It's not going to make
yeah,
me feel triggered.
yeah,
It's kind of weird that you're saying the word cupcake in the middle of a conversation or during a show.
yeah,
So it kind of like distracts me from what I'm doing. It takes me off
yeah,
guard. And maybe it's even just a little bit funny.
yeah,
And again, it
yeah,
like just de-escalates that overstimulation or understimulation. Yeah, so there's a couple things that maybe you can give it a try, and
yeah.
I hope that answers your your question. There are no further questions, and we have hit it on the hour. Like, look at that. I'm so
Look at
impressed.
that. Perfect.
um, I just want to thank everybody for being here and staying for the full session. Um, I want to acknowledge that you've shown up for yourself, which is incredibly important, and just being so brave to do that. But not only you've shown up for yourself, you've shown up for others as well, because remember, this is a community. And knowing that there are others on here again makes us feel less alone. So you've done this for yourself, but you've also done a really good deed for others in helping them feel a little bit less alone tonight or today. And Liz, thank you so much for,
Pleasure.
for being so vulnerable and for sharing your story and exposing your secrets and the shame that you experienced so young. And it's really incredible that you're able to do that, and the beautiful things that you did, and the gifts that you gifted, and not only did you gift a gift of a drawing, but you probably really changed a lot of people's lives. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you everyone
It's
for
a
being here.
pleasure.
Just to echo what Meryl said, that if you're here for the first time and seeking information, it's a major, major moment in people's lives, I think, to do that. So I feel very
Yeah.
honoured to be here. So thank you for having me. Thanks a
Thank you,
lot.
everybody. And if you have any questions, please email us. We love hearing from you. And if you stay till the end and you're really interested in joining SkinPick or TrickStop to receive treatment and management for skin picking and hair pulling, I have a promo code for you to get $100 off your first month. And the promo code is webinar, all capital letters, 100. And if you don't remember that, you can email me and I'll pass it along. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you, Meryl.
You're welcome. Bye.
Take care. Bye, everybody.